state of our national security with COVID and with all the terrorism threats in the country?
The convention is that security ministers are in camera, and we have this. I'm drawing his attention.
Really, you have been asked a question. Leadership have some privileges, and the minority leader often takes his privilege very seriously. So, yes, Honourable Minister, please. Honourable Member, we are doing this as a public hearing. If there's any matter brought up I consider will be inappropriate, I will disallow it. But this is a public hearing. Yes.
So, yes, Mr. Honorable Chairman, we started with COVID, and let me say that COVID has its own very peculiar security challenges, which we're having to deal with, continues to be a problem, and we will have to be dealing with it for as long as we have the COVID, the challenges that it has on our finances as a nation, and therefore the effect on other sectors that we would have spent these monies on, loss of lives. A whole lot of challenges do come with COVID. People are unable to go to work. When there's a lockdown, it comes with a lot of security challenges. So it's a whole area of itself, challenges that are posed to national security as a result of the COVID. You remember the problems that we had when we went on the first lockdown, the difficulty of getting food for our people. All these were challenges. We also continue to have the normal security challenges. Crime continues to be a problem. Illegal mining is a problem. Drug and human trafficking. We have a lot of chieftaincy problems. The borders continue to be porous, and we have transnational crimes. We also do have some emerging crimes such as cybercrime and terrorism. But to a large extent, I think we are managing them fairly well. And if you ask me, the security situation in the country today, I would say it's stable.
Chairman and colleagues, I'll yield the floor shortly. How ready is Ghana for a cyber attack? What preparedness, what readiness in terms of IT infrastructure have you deployed? The Ghana Armed Forces have no IT technology. The police service is relying on some 1 or 2 rooms technology. How ready are we for an attack that may be cyber related?
Cybercrime is not fairly new, but it wasn't what we considered in our country as a major security threat. But in recent times, it's become one of the real major security challenges and threats that we have, and we are aware that we must find a way to respond to it. Otherwise, we will find ourselves in some hot waters. Already, it is doing quite some harm and damage in our country. But if you go to some of the institutions, you will find that we need to be properly resourced. We need to have the proper human resources to be able to attend to the challenges there. We did study the whole problem holistically and came to the conclusion that within the country, if there is one institution that is better placed, that is well prepared, that is well resourced to take care of our cyber security challenges, it probably is the Ministry of Communication. And over the past few years, you would have noticed that we have been citing our cyber security architecture at the Ministry of Communication. We still believe that it is important for the national security to acquire the expertise, the other security agencies to acquire the expertise. And just before the end of last year, we considered setting up a task force on the digitalization of the security and intelligence agencies. We were not able to put it in place, but we hope that this year we will be able to do that. That will mark the start of very serious preparation and efforts to have the capacity that is needed in the area of cybersecurity within the intelligence agencies and the other security agencies. But for now, we want to take comfort from the expertise that is readily available at the Ministry of Communication.
Chairman and colleagues, as I've said, I'm just warming up the minister. I observed that in the public domain, there's too much visibility of armed soldiers with weapons and guns everywhere, some following chief executives, others even ministers. Is it a government policy to deploy the Ghana Armed Forces instead of the Ghana Police Service, which is responsible for civil order in the country? What explains that?
This is a decision that is normally taken by the security agencies. For instance, when we do have a report that a particular individual has a problem and that people are after his life, we think there is a danger, we come in to provide support. We do not only give it to ministers and to other high-profile members of society. I do know of some people, in fact, I do know of a journalist that we continue to provide security cover and security support to. It is our responsibility to ensure that the lives of the people of this country, whatever their status, are protected, and whenever it becomes necessary, we try to do.
Chairman, it's appreciated, but Minister, my question, is that a vote of no confidence on the Ghana Police Service established by law to maintain law and order? Nobody has a problem with the police maintaining public peace and order. But if we so see soldiers everywhere, growing up as a young person, let me go back to your rural village there, Masibuama. Are you comfortable with saw soldiers around with guns everywhere as we are seeing them in town?
Anywhere you have seen soldiers having to protect a particular individual, it is because in our assessment, the assessment of the security experts, there is the need for such support to be given to that particular person.
And I'm saying you cannot do so with the police.
At times you have to use certain equipment which will not be readily available, say, to the police.
Are you suggesting that the Ghana Police Service is not up to the task?
I mean, clearly the Ghana Police Service and the other security agencies have, in terms of equipment, in terms of men, they've never had the full complement of what it takes to provide the most effective policing in the country. So
Chairman,
yes,
I'll just end here with a reference to the Constitution for the nominee to share his view. One of the very respected members of the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament, and you know that the Office of the Auditor General remains an ally of Parliament to combat corruption and to deal with matters of misappropriation, misapplication, and others. There's an interesting Supreme Court ruling which mandates the Auditor General to be able to search ahead of Parliament reviewing the report. And Chairman, with your indulgence, I quote, and Minister nominee, if you have the Constitution there, Article 187, there shall be an Auditor General. You are more familiar with it than any other person. Then it states in 5, the Auditor General shall, within 6 months after the end of the immediately preceding financial year, to which each of the accounts mentioned in Clause 2 of this article relate, submit his report to Parliament, and shall, in that report, draw attention to any irregularities in the accounts audited and to any other matter which in his opinion ought to be brought to the notice of Parliament. Now, if the Supreme Court says that the Auditor General can proceed even without Parliament acting as constitutionally required of us, as a professional accountant, do you see anything wrong marrying the two positions together?
I think it's a very, very serious situation. And let me say that when I make comment on this, I comment as a senior member of the Ghana Institute of Chartered Accountants and as a person who has taught at a very, very high level. I've been the key lecturer on the Masters in Auditing course at one of our universities. I certainly do know what I'm talking about because I also used to be the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee. I must say that I was really sad when I heard of that decision by the Supreme Court. I want to believe, with all due respect, that it is totally wrong. And I have said to some of my colleagues in Parliament that you must find a way to fight it. Honorable Chairman, I say this because the Ghana public financial management system is modeled along what we call the Westminster system, which revolves around the budget cycle. The budget cycle are in four phases. The first phase where the budget is prepared, the second phase where the budget comes to Parliament for Parliament to approve the budget before the government takes it to the third stage to implement it. And then the Constitution says, at the end of it all, we want an independent person. Call him the Auditor General. In some places, they will even call him the Parliament's Auditor. We want the Parliament's Auditor working for and on behalf of Parliament to go through the accounts of the executive branch and confirm to Parliament whether monies have been spent in accordance with the budget that Parliament approved, and whether in so doing, government has also followed the financial laws and regulations that Parliament has approved. This is the job that the Auditor General does. The Auditor General does this job on behalf of Parliament. It is Parliament that employs him to do that. The practice has been for the Auditor General to then bring his report to Parliament. In fact, it is said in auditing that the work of the Auditor General is not conclusive until Parliament would have ratified the report. It is therefore totally wrong for the Auditor General to go ahead to disallow and surcharge when the institution that employed him to do that audit has not even seen the audit report. It is only Parliament that can say that, yes, your report is okay, and therefore this man should be surcharged. The Auditor General can disqualify and tell us, but the decision whether to actually disqualify it or not must be a decision of Parliament. Mr. Chairman, with the current position, there is no need for the Public Accounts Committee. The Auditor General goes ahead to punish people. If you have a good Auditor General, you thank your God. But let's wait until we get a bad Auditor General with these powers given to him. Everybody will be in serious trouble. So I continue to urge Parliament to take a serious look at that matter and make sure that it is reversed.
Very well. Yes, Reverend.
Indeed, Honorable Chairman, if I can just indulge me, I've always given the example of an audit. Say I have a company, Kandapar Limited, and I employ some auditors to come and audit it for me. The company belongs to me, I'm the chairman, but I'm old, and my son is managing it. At the end of the year, I get an auditor to come and do the audit for me. The auditor finds that my son has misappropriated some money. Without bringing the report to me, he takes my son to court and he is jailed. Obviously, that is wrong. I employed him. If he has any report, it must come to me. Then I will empower him to do what he wants. And I have a very, very strong view on this. I believe Parliament should take it up.
Very well. Yes, Honorable Member for, I thought Reverend has withdrawn. Oh? Well, when I give you, you put your hand down, so very well. Kindly wait. Yes, Reverend.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity, and congratulations, Honorable Minister nominee. Given your over 43 years of both private and public practice as a venerable public servant, and rightly so, the appropriateness of your credentials and previous positions you've held in very sensitive areas, I must congratulate you once again. To my question, Parliament, over the years, over the past 4 years, has approved some substantial amounts to the various security agencies, and subsequently we've seen the deployment of logistics and resources to the various security agencies in our efforts of retooling the national security apparatus. But the observation has been inequitable deployment of such resources that have already been procured and resources expended on to the various locations, and in particular, the locations that do suffer are the areas in deprived locations. What would you do when you get a nod to rectify this anomaly?
Honorable Chairman, the difficulty has always been that in previous years, and we're not talking about during the NDC time, during the NPP time, during the CPP time, the truth of the matter is that the security and intelligence agencies have never been given the right amount of money for them to be able to do their work. Understandably so. When you do have insufficient resources, as we have in these developing countries, there is always the challenge of whether money is wisely spent on education, on health, and most times it is considered that, as for, well, if you don't have money to buy chalk, why do you want to get money to go and buy guns? Why do you want to get money to go and buy, you know, equipment for the police and the say the armed forces? And for many years, we've been able to live with this. We've not made sufficient provision. We've not given them sufficient monies. But somehow, we've been able to have safe, secure, stable countries. Things are changing. And we believe that it is important for us to find for the security and intelligence agencies monies that they need to be able to do their work. Most importantly, Honorable Chairman, there is the need for us to leverage technology in the way that we do our work. And this is something that that needs lots of money, and something that we should be able to get governments to get their minds to it. I must say that over the past 4 years that I've been in office, I've been able to convince cabinet to a very, very large extent to devote substantial amounts of monies to the security and intelligence agencies, and we will continue to do that. Honorable Chairman, when we first came 4 years ago, and again, don't blame any government, the threat of terrorism from outside was real. Everybody knew it did exist. But it wasn't as threatening, as dangerous as it has been over the past few years. We need to be able to have the resources, equipment, men, all that it takes to ensure that we can keep these terrorists at bay. It requires money, it requires prioritization, and we will continue to urge government to do that for us. Honorable Chairman, the honorable member is right. You go to some villages, some districts in our country, and you find that you hardly can find any policeman there to do the policing work. In actual fact, it is possible that you can find some districts where they don't have more than 2 police stations, and yet it covers a whole wide area, and the police should be able to move around. Policing, Honorable Chairman, requires mobility, so they should have, at least, at the very least, they should have vehicles. You will find that in most cases, they don't even have the vehicles. At times, they don't even have the weapons to do the policing work. So, I'm happy because there is the realization within government that there is the need to do something about it. And I think going by what we've been able to achieve over the past couple of years, that is the monies allocated to us, I think sooner or later we will be able to get to the point where we are able to provide real policing to our people wherever they are in the country.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honorable Nominee, in your submission just a while ago, you indicated terrorism as a major threat, security threat. Of course, in West Africa and the Sahel sub-region, this is a notable security challenge. Other experts have also outlined other notable security threats to do with illegal exploitation of natural resources and conflicts between nomadic herdsmen and farmers, and maritime piracy, and such other notable security threats. To what extent are threats emanating from these challenges interlinked, and what is the resilience of our national security apparatus to contain?
Yes, they are interlinked. Yes, they are all very, very dangerous. I may not want to mention specific names, but there is the case of this sister country, one of our neighbors. When we took over, or when I became the Minister for National Security about 4 years ago, the terrorists had taken over some 8% of that country. So many years later, 3 years later, as we speak, the terrorists occupy over 75 to 80% of that country. That is the nature of the threat that faces us, and that is what can happen to us if we do not get the resources, if we do not plan properly to fight to keep them off. So, yes, the dangers are there. Remember, there was a time when we thought terrorism was all about some terrorists coming into our country, going into a hotel where the expatriates are and bombing here and there. No, today it's much more than that. They are not coming to come, they are not going to come as an invading force with guns shooting here and there. They have a way of sneaking into our country, penetrating into our country, and causing a lot of harm. And it is not just the terrorists coming in. There's the problem with piracy. The area, the Gulf of Guinea, used to be a very, very safe area. Over the past 2 years, it's been the worst area in terms of piracy crimes all over the world. So that also is a major danger. These are all interlinked, and Honorable Chairman, I may probably add that it was because of the serious challenges that we've been having that the ministry and government came up with a national framework for preventing and countering violent extremism and terrorism in Ghana, which is guiding us in how we respond to these challenges. And probably it would not be proper if I do not recognize the role that was played by the Defense and Interior Committee of Parliament in the preparation of this document, and also the support that we got from leading security experts who have served as security gurus within the NDC before. So now we do have a document that has contribution from people who really matter and we do have this belief that it is capable of doing the work. So the framework is there, and as much as possible, we try to have it implemented.
Very well. Yes, Honorable Gaga.
Thank you.
That's all. Yeah, Honorable Nominee, allow me to congratulate you for the good works you have done for the ministry in the past 4 years when you served as minister. But I have a few questions to ask you. Before I do that, I'd like to refer you to Section 24F of the new Security and Intelligence Agencies Act 2020. You spearheaded the passage of this law, and the provision states as follows. And I'm talking about the functions of the Minister for National Security. That the minister shall ensure that all activities of the national security apparatus are carried out in compliance with domestic and international laws, unquote. Now, in the period leading up to the expiration of the life of the 7th Parliament of our 4th Republic, we noticed the massive deployment of the military and police within the precincts of Parliament, to the discomfort of many well-meaning Ghanaians, including our own minority leader, who promptly issued a press release in condemnation of the massive deployment of the security apparatus within our precincts. Now, subsequent to the deployment, on the 7th of January, a group of soldiers armed to the teeth in the company of some elements from the Greater Accra Regional Command had the audacity to storm the parliamentary chamber when the House had actually convened to elect the Speaker of Parliament. My question is, I know at the time your tenure as minister had determined that the technical staff, the coordinator, and all other officers were at post. What briefings did you subsequently get with respect to the deployment? Who authorized the deployment of the troops in the parliamentary chamber?
Well, Honorable Chairman, I couldn't agree more with you. I mean, it's obviously a strange thing when you have soldiers going into a parliamentary chamber for whatever reason. When I saw it, I was also alarmed. My colleagues were equally alarmed. All of us in government were alarmed that something like that had happened. So I did take the trouble to find out how it happened. Honorable Member, it was that simple. Somebody, a commander, in his opinion, thought that things were getting out of hand in the chamber and that they needed to go there to try to restore order. I posed the question, to restore what order? Did you think your presence there was going to frighten the members of Parliament? No. You were not going to be able to frighten them. Were you going to arrest them? No. You couldn't have arrested anybody there. So I asked, why? What was the motivation for you to have gone there? I can only say that this is something that should not have happened. I'm happy that, yes, they did come there. It was as bad as you say, but no harm was really caused to any member of Parliament. And let me agree with you that going forward, this is not something that we should encourage, and we hope that it doesn't happen again.
A follow-up question. Honorable Nominee, given the magnitude of the problem, the fact that Parliament is the fulcrum around which our democratic dispensation revolves. And the fact that at the point in time when the said commander decided to storm the chamber, would you recommend as a minister, if you're giving the nod responsible for national security, that the said officer be sanctioned to serve as a deterrent to like-minded officers in the future in the name of preserving our democracy?
I do know, Honourable Member, as the government, the President representative at the Ministry for National Security, that yes, the CDS has been asked to investigate the matter and to take the appropriate action if he also comes by the conclusion that what was done was totally unprofessional. So it's not that we will do something if we come back to power, or if I get a nod. I know that orders have already been given for the CDS to take appropriate action. And I agree with you, nobody should underestimate the significance of what happened.
Chairman Miles, were there time limits given for this investigation, Minister Nominee?
I really need to find out whether the report of the investigation has already come out already or not. You know, it wouldn't normally come through me. This is something that will come through the Minister of Defense. I'm not aware whether the report is out.
Yes, Chief.
Chairman, thank you very much. Just bear with me, just a follow-up on the same question. Mr. Nominee, I commend you for the frank answers given to that particular question. But I was at the scene, you know, and from what we saw, just to recall a few things that happened. I saw the marshal, you know, on the floor, practically on the floor, helpless. What?
We allow the minister to flow. Investigations will go. We'll get the opportunity to say what we have to say at the investigation. It's enough. You will have your way, your own. You have your own. Yes, Honorable Agaga, continue.
Yes. Thank you, Honorable Nominee. My next question has to do with the botched operation by the SWAT team from your former ministry during the conduct of the Ayawaso West Wuogon by-election, which then became the subject matter for an inquiry led by the Venerable Justice Emil Short. Now, the Emil Short Commission of Inquiry actually came out with a very comprehensive report, and at page, or let me say paragraph 2.7, the Commission of Inquiry actually recommended that the SWAT team at your former ministry be disbanded. I am aware that subsequent to the release of this report, government's white paper jettisoned this very recommendation. But given where you are coming from, having once served as the minister responsible for the interior defense, you have vast experience. And in the face of your previous mandate as minister responsible for national security, with the authority to coordinate the intelligence, the affairs of the intelligence agencies of our state and the security agencies as a whole, you still believe that it is necessary to have such an operational unit at your ministry, notwithstanding the fact that government's white paper says otherwise?
Honorable Chairman, the honorable member is trying to get so many things into one statement, and I don't know where to start from. But let me say about this incident, right, because I believe honorable members are keen to know about what happened at Ayawaso, Uogon, during the by-election. I suppose that is what you are referring to. If that is the case, Honorable Chairman, let me say that that was a very, very unfortunate incident, coming on the heels of by-election violence at Etiwa, at Tripoli, at Talensi constituencies. We had experienced such things, and we thought it was not going to happen in Ghana again, that we had seen how bad it could be, and at Talensi, it was going to end it all. So when this one came up, everybody was alarmed. Everybody was concerned. And I think it is fair to say that the president demonstrated his personal concern and the concern of the government, and also the concerns of the general public, because that there was a cry from the general public that something be done. Also, the president demonstrated his personal commitment, that of the government, and did set up the committee made up of very, very eminent people, Justice Emil Short, Professor Henrietta Mensah Bonsu, who now serves on the Supreme Court, and a former IGP. I think it was appropriate that he did that. You did talk about we jettisoned the report that came out of it. Well, that needs to be explained, because the government white paper, Honorable Chairman, made it very clear. The government white paper did say why it was unable to accept all the recommendations. The government white paper accepted a number of the recommendations, but did say that they were unable, the government was unable to accept all the recommendations for some two fundamental reasons. The first one, Honorable Chairman, was that if you look at the terms of reference given to the committee, the first item, item A, was that they were to make a full, faithful, and impartial inquiry into the circumstances of and establish the facts leading to the events and associated violence that occurred during the Ayawaso West Wuogon by-election. When you go through the report, you do not have any, you don't find anywhere where they respond to the first demand of the Commission of Inquiry, which was that they should do this. The government said, because of this fundamental issue, we are unable to accept the report in its entirety. There was a second fundamental reason. You see, they were assuming, when you read through the report, that the so-called